Yeah.
Super. So when Julia sort of approached me about this, I was really excited to share with this community. I don't consider myself, to be honest, I don't consider myself in HR, really. I've always distanced myself from HR because I thought it was for serious adults and I was just a lowly recruiter. But what it kind of came to pass over time was I spent an awful lot of my time looking at data to inform the decision making. Now, admittedly, not at a scale like Sylvia has at her disposal, very, very low NCATs, very, very small sort of sample sizes, but it can still inform those decisions and help you move the company forward. And I think in this time of crisis where so many companies have had to downsize, you know, we saw yesterday Airbnb laying off a quarter of their staff, and you know, that's a company that raised $2 billion in rescue funding. And if they have to lay off, then it's going to impact everybody in this room. And so when Julia sort of announced this was the topic, my mind immediately went to like, how can you use analytics to drive an impact on an individual basis? So whilst analytics is very powerful at scale, it can also have an impact on a one-to-one basis. So I wanted to run you through my thinking around that. And yeah, couldn't be more contrasting to Sylvia's very polished professional presentation and me waffling about how to help people using data. So we'll see how this goes. I figured I'd just introduce myself a little bit. I spent the last 8 years of my career in recruitment and the talent space. I've always, as I said, taken a data-driven approach. I think that's probably, maybe I'll say data-informed, not data-driven, especially considering the company I'm keeping tonight. I've definitely reviewed well over 1 million resumes and LinkedIn profiles over my career. I did some very rough napkin math to get there. I started my career in a recruitment agency, hated it, thought I was garbage at recruitment and sales and was going to go and be a project manager. And then serendipitously, someone reached out to me from Google. I spent 4 years in Google over in Dublin, great experience. I then moved to Canada to follow my wife because that's how you import people to Canada, is by sending lovely people around the world. I joined a company called Flip, led their recruitment efforts. And for the last 2 years, I've been at Opencare as their director of talent and scaling up there. So really not, as you can see from all of this, not really a strong analytics background, but it's just kind of made sense to me from the start. And so when I think about analytics, and especially people analytics, I really want to emphasize it's the connection of data to effective decision-making. And I think the piece there that stands out is effective decision-making. And whilst you may not have the largest sample set or the biggest amount of data to work with, the value that I see in people analytics is sort of putting up those red flags and starting to ask questions about what's going on there. It's less about being able to predict the answers, because at the scale that I work at in a 50-person startup, I can't predict the answers from the data sets that I have, but I can start asking the right questions. As we go through this time, it's estimated currently COVID has affected about 3.1 million Canadians so far. So just under 10% of the population are impacted by unemployment, reduced working hours, pay cuts. Like, this is wide ranging, and it's not just individuals. And so when you look at that landscape, any of your former employees that you've had to sort of part ways with really need to go above and beyond to stand out from the crowd, especially the sales, customer success, account management, recruitment communities have been particularly hard hit as people look, as Sylvia said, to control costs and make sure that, you know, direct revenue driving functions are prioritized, and those that can't drive revenue, like sales while everyone's closed, are then sort of removed from the payroll. So what I diagnose is that there's kind of two types of former employee during the crisis. There are those that have this very clear career path ahead of them. So those are the people that are very certain on what their next role looks like. They know the type of company they want to work for. They're still passionate about their craft and what they do. The second are those that are kind of more lost in the woods. Those people that the termination has become a sort of a junction in their career where they're really sort of starting to question, you know, do I want to continue in the career that I'm going down? Do I even enjoy what I do? Should I enjoy what I do? These are all questions that come to the fore when you're suddenly faced with this crisis that you don't have any control over. And, you know, those folks that are lost in the woods are really desperate to find direction and meaning. Now, I just want to pause at this point and just say that like these two personas do not correlate with disposition, worries, mental health. Like even if you have a clear career path ahead, you can still be in a very poor state from like a mental health perspective. I'm just talking about like how people analytics can help them move through this. So as people analytics professionals, how can you support those people that have a clear career path? So before I go into data, I'm looking at data from a qualitative and quantitative perspective. Again, I come from very small data sets. Please don't judge me for that, but hopefully this gives you some principles. So data can give those people with a career path more control, and it can also make them stand out from the crowd. For those that don't know their direction forward, the data can actually give them that direction that they've been seeking, and you can be the catalyst to help them understand that. And it can also empower decision-making and give them confidence in the decisions they're making. So I'll break that down a little bit more. So firstly, giving control. Our key principle is everything is a funnel. Now, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with the funnel concept, but basically, everything that you do is a funnel. And it's the same for recruitment as well. So, all of you have a recruitment team. You will have statistics, you'll have numbers around, how many candidates it takes at the top of the funnel to make a successful hire. By externalizing that and sharing that and educating your former employees, you start to empower them with the tools to set their job search up for success. If you know that for your company, it takes 80 people at the top of your funnel to make one successful hire, if your former employee applies to one company, doesn't get the job, they're just going to go, well, what's going on? I feel bad, and it spirals into deteriorating mental health. By helping them understand that this is normal, they have to apply to a statistically significant number of companies in order to stand a good chance of getting selected. It changes the way they approach it. So you can share your stats that you have. I mean, Opencare, our all-time hiring rate is 0.0032% of all candidates get hired at Opencare. So that's a very disheartening statistic, but by giving them that control and understanding it, they stand a better chance. Additionally, you should have metrics around application channels. So which channels are most successful for your organization? It may be referrals, it may be applications through LinkedIn versus Monster or Indeed. These are pieces of information that will be able to tell your former employees, look, this is where recruiters are seeing success. And they can then sort of use that to structure their search in a way that they're optimizing their time to work on the channels that are most important. So if you're seeing that 80% of the people you hire come from referral channels, they want to actually be spending their time networking as much as possible with folks that have relevant skill sets or are working at companies that are interesting to them. Additionally, success patterns. So are you seeing a correlation in your organization between schools, degrees, previous companies, and those top performers? So if all of your top performers are Rotman MBA grads, then perhaps that helps them to structure their search by going and finding other companies that has a large proportion of MBA grads, because that might actually be the environment that they're going to be most successful in. So obviously, funnel, that was meant to animate in earlier, but it didn't, so I apologize. But that's a funnel, if anyone doesn't know. I'm sure Sylvia is better positioned to talk about funnels than I am, but there you go. So the second piece is standing out. So with 1 million unemployed people, there's a huge amount of noise. We've all seen the Airtable list. We've all seen the sort of calls to action to help people. How can we use data to help your former employees cut through the noise? So when I scan resumes, I will immediately skip over any large amounts of text and start looking and seeing are there quantifiable things throughout the achievements and throughout the responsibilities that people list out. Do they, even before I read the context of it, I'll just start to scan through and just say do we have percentage increases? Do we have revenue numbers? Do we have optimizations that are listed throughout? Once I start seeing that, then I'll start to dig in and go a little bit deeper. But if someone just says that they do a load of things, that's not interesting for me as somebody who has to screen hundreds of resumes a day sometimes. I really want to optimize for those people who know what their starting point is, what their finish point is, and what the delta between it is. So Analytical people are so critical in today's economy. You're seeing this demand go up for consultants to go and work from the big four consultancy firms to smaller startups, because that empowers them to make better decisions. They can move faster with a higher degree of accuracy. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they're a data scientist. It's just that frame of mind of like, do we measure everything? Do I know how I'm going to be successful? So reinforcing your analytical skills as a candidate, vital right now. Measuring success is kind of the manifestation of that analytical mindset. It's how you demonstrate that you know that you need to measure where you start from, where you finished, and what that impact was. So if you don't know like what your impact is to the business, there's a problem there. As Sylvia highlighted, everybody's looking now for what is the revenue and what's the impact that each person on your payroll can be driving. You have the power and the knowledge as HR professionals to give them that insight. So you need to be equipping your former employees with the metrics that help them demonstrate their impact. So if you're working with a sales rep, give them their sales numbers. Show them how they performed versus the quota that they were set. Show them what that allowed the company to do by overperforming. So, did they, if they closed a certain amount of revenue, that's great, but that's contextual to your business. Instead, you can quantify it as a percentage over improvement over the others on the team to help, that's universal. Sorry, I'm not explaining this very well. Next point, delta, not absolute. So people fall into the trap of giving absolute values. And so if you say to me as, let's say, an account manager, you're managing a book of 100 accounts and you're really proud because that's the most accounts in your business. Everybody else is managing 20 accounts, you're managing 100. That's amazing. Until you go and apply to a company where the average rep is managing 1,000 accounts, in which case your 100 accounts looks insignificant and not exciting for the business. However, if you can say that you're managing 5x the number of accounts of anybody else in your business, that's immediately transferable to any other organization, and they can quantify and understand that impact without the context of your organization. It's exactly the same for sales reps. If your average deal value is $60,000, you may feel really proud of that. But if you go and apply to a Google where you're doing enterprise deals worth $1 million plus, your $60,000 doesn't look very good anymore. So we always want to be helping our team members to calculate what's the delta. How far are they from the average? How have they optimized or improved? What's that growth been as a percentage, rather than just sort of stating it as a fact or stating absolute numbers. This is like not a concept I'm very good at explaining. Can I get some thumbs up if we understand this? Did I use enough words to explain this? Because I've tried to explain this to other folks before and they've just looked at me quizzically, so I apologize. Okay, so now when we want to, we've talked about sort of standing out. Now we want to talk about how do you provide direction for folks using data. So I really argue that success is the intersection of commitment and competence. You can be exceptionally strong at a skill and not want to do it and not be very successful, or vice versa. So, when you're working with folks that aren't clear on their path forward, you want to help them find that direction. And so data, to my mind, is only powerful with analysis and really helping people to sort of parse out, what does this actually mean? So giving direction is basically you stepping in and asking those questions of the former employee to help them work through their own sort of frameworks and their own priorities. So as I mentioned, competence versus commitment. If you want to know more about this, I would advise you to check out the SL2 framework, really, really strong leadership framework that I'm big on. So competence is demonstrated knowledge of skills. Commitment is the motivation to do that task or use those skills. When you get success and skills together, then that's where, competence and commitment together, that's where you see people be exceptionally successful. And so how does this relate to data? This allows us to actually use performance reviews, whether formal or whether it's informal performance reviews, and help your former employees to diagnose, your strengths. Why are you particularly strong at that? Is it because you have a deep competence, or is it because you're very committed to it and excited by it? And you can ask these questions informed by the data you've got from your performance reviews to help them understand, like, where am I particularly strong and why am I strong? Without understanding whether it's competence or commitment that's driven them to be successful, there's no way that they can make the right decision for their next move. Additionally, areas for improvement, same process. Were you struggling here because you're not committed to it or because you don't have the skills to do it? Finally, choosing a path forward. So now you've gone through this process of helping to educate them around what the recruitment process looks like, give them the tools to stand out from the crowd, sort of infer and determine what their strengths and weaknesses are and where they want to be focusing. Now it's about making that decision. So the final question is around sort of energy generators. So what are the things that your former employees really enjoy the most about? When do they feel most engaged? Is that because they feel particularly competent or because they're really excited about the problems? And it's not about you as a HR professional having the answers for them or giving them the answers. It's about you asking them the right questions and helping them to facilitate it. This is the people part of people analytics. We can spend all of our time looking at data. At the end of the day, we need to speak to the individuals, and having these questions, just asking the right questions, can really light people up and give them a clear path forward. The final piece is just around salaries and competencies. All of you will have salary data that you use to give offers. These people who are potentially pivoting their career or going in a different direction, maybe moving into a space where they don't know what the average salary is. They don't know what the right expectations are. You have that data, share it with them. Additionally, if you're a company that uses competencies or frameworks, you probably have someone in your organization that is doing the job that your former employee wants to move into. Connect them, give them competencies, give them any frameworks that you have to help them be effective in this new role. I've gone over time, sorry, Julia, but yeah, does anyone have questions